My husband and father-in-law both quit their jobs. When I complained, my husband told me, "It's a man's world, you just live in it." So I took a job offer abroad without telling them. 3 weeks later, they got a package that left them speechless. We live in Charlotte, North Carolina, or we did. I don't anymore. But I guess if you want to understand why, you have to rewind a bit. This isn't a story about a sudden breakup or one fight that destroyed everything. It's a slow unraveling. Like watching a rope fray thread by thread until one day it just gives out. And no one can say they didn't see it coming. I met Mark at a bar near the University of North Carolina campus. I was 27, working in architectural design, recently promoted, and honestly just feeling on top of the world. He was sharp-dressed, confident, had a calm voice that made you listen. We clicked fast. Dated for a year. Got married after 18 months. At first, he worked in logistics for a shipping company. Not glamorous, but steady. Reliable. He wasn't the most ambitious guy, but he made an effort. Or so I thought. We bought a house just outside the city. 2 bedrooms, a big yard, close enough to downtown but far enough to feel like you had space to breathe. I worked long hours. He'd cook sometimes. Laundry was mostly me, but I didn't mind back then. We had our roles. Or at least that's what I told myself. His dad, Ronald, moved in temporarily after a surgery and just never left. I tried to be understanding. He had a rough upbringing, military background, very my way or the highway. Mark looked up to him like he was some sort of war hero philosopher hybrid. But to me? He was just loud, opinionated, and always looking for someone to blame. Then came 2023. First, Ron quit his part-time mechanic job at the local shop. Said kids these days don't know a carburetor from a toaster and that he was wasting his time trying to teach fools. Okay. He's old, he's earned his rest. Fine. Then, out of nowhere, Mark quit too. He came home one afternoon, tossed his work bag on the floor, popped a beer, and said, "I'm done." I blinked. Done with what? He stretched his arms, cracked his knuckles like he just got done with some heroic feat work. The 9-to-5 hamster wheel. I want to do something real. I thought he was kidding. I laughed. He didn't. Turns out, he and his dad had been talking. Planning. Men's revival or some nonsense. They wanted to start a YouTube channel, videos about reclaiming traditional masculinity, fixing cars, chopping wood, drinking whiskey by fire pits. That kind of thing. I tried to be supportive at first. I really did. I helped him film. I even designed their banner, their intro animation. I told myself this was temporary. A phase. Surely he'd get tired of it once reality kicked in. But weeks turned into months. They bought new gear. Lights, cameras, microphones. Mark started ordering random books on stoicism and war strategy. Ronald was now calling himself Uncle Ron on camera, and they genuinely thought they were going to go viral. And through it all, I paid for everything. Mortgage. Utilities. Groceries. Gas. I even had to top up the YouTube account when Mark forgot the credit card bill. At first, they made excuses. "Baby, we're building a brand. Next month is going to be huge. You'll see, this will pay off." Meanwhile, I was working overtime to keep us from slipping into debt. The tipping point came after I pulled a double shift. I was exhausted. I hadn't eaten all day. My boss had yelled at me in front of clients because I missed a file deadline due to our internet being cut off the week before, yes, because the bill wasn't paid. I came home to find the two of them sitting on the porch, feet up, grilling ribs like it was the 4th of July. Music blasting. Beer in hand. Laughing. I stood there in my blouse and heels, drenched from the surprise rainstorm I got caught in walking to my car. No one got up. No one asked how my day was. I walked into the house. found the pile of unopened mail, grabbed the utility bills and went back out. "Mark," I said, my voice low, steady, not angry, just done. "We can't afford this. You need to get a job." He didn't even look ashamed. He raised his beer in the air, smiling, looked over at Ron, and said, "It's a man's world, sweetheart. You just live in it." Ron chuckled. They clinked their bottles. I don't remember going to bed that night. I just remember sitting in the bathroom with the door locked, staring at the grout between the tiles and thinking, this can't be it. This can't be my life. The next day, everything changed. I got an email from Sierra, a former coworker now living in Amsterdam. She remembered I had once said I'd love to work abroad. They needed a lead project manager for a year-long contract. High budget. High profile. Visa and relocation included. All expenses paid. It was like someone dropped a lifeline in front of me. I emailed her back immediately. Asked for 24 hours. Then I thought about it. Really thought. And something inside me whispered, take it. So I did. I didn't tell Mark. I didn't tell Ronald. I started preparing in secret. I packed only what mattered. I opened a new bank account under just my name. I rerouted my paycheck. I sold my jewelry, the fancy stuff I never wore. I booked my one-way ticket. I scheduled my departure for a Thursday morning. Quiet. No drama. I left behind 2 weeks' worth of money in the joint account, just enough to cover the basics. And then, 3 weeks later, I sent them a package. Inside was a copy of our last 8 utility bills, all paid by me. A printout of our joint account balance, just $13 and some change. A list of all the gear they bought with notes beside each item, paid by me. And finally, a handwritten letter. Here's how the letter began. Mark, when we got married, I thought we were building something. A life. A future. A partnership. Somewhere along the way, I think you confused being a man with doing nothing. You told me this was a man's world. That I just live in it. But here's the truth, this world you're living in? I built it. I paid for it. I kept it from collapsing. While you were podcasting and posing, I was working 14-hour days to keep us out of foreclosure. And the day you told me to relax because it was a man's world, was the day I realized I had been married to a shadow. So I've stepped out of it. I've moved to Amsterdam. I took a job that respects me, values me, and pays me 3 times what I earned back home. I'm living in a studio with clean walls, no one yelling about carburetors in the garage, no wet socks on the floor, no condescending glances from a man I once loved. You won't be hearing from me again. But I hope someday you wake up and realize what you lost, before the next woman has to carry your entire world on her shoulders too. Malia, I never got to hear their immediate reactions. I turned off international calling and blocked their numbers the moment I landed in Schiphol Airport. But I imagine it wasn't pretty. Later, a mutual friend of ours, Britt, sent me a message through LinkedIn. She said Mark had gone quiet for a few days. Ronald ranted on Facebook about entitled modern women and how feminism destroyed his family. That post got taken down after a few people called him out. The YouTube channel? It fizzled. Their last video was titled, How to Survive Betrayal, and it had 137 views, 65 of which were probably from trolls in the comments. I didn't watch it, but Britt said they looked tired, bloated, angry, lost. Apparently, Mark tried applying for a job again, but with that work gap and no real freelance income to show, no one was biting. Ronald went back to part-time at the same shop he quit. Begged for the job, actually. And meanwhile, I was walking to work through cobblestone streets, sipping Dutch espresso, feeling like I had reclaimed a part of myself I hadn't even realized I lost. It wasn't glamorous. Don't get me wrong. The first few weeks were rough. Jet lag hit hard. I didn't know the language. I missed my dog, Lacey, who I left with my cousin in Asheville. I cried a few times in the shower, not from regret, but from overwhelm. From the sudden silence. From the lack of chaos. It turns out, when you've been living in a constant storm, peace feels unfamiliar. Almost suspicious. Like something is about to go wrong. But it never did. I started meeting people. Real people. A single mom named Noor who lived upstairs and made the best stroopwafels I've ever tasted. A bartender named Lucian who would save me a seat by the window every Friday. Co-workers who didn't talk down to me. A manager who actually thanked me after meetings. My apartment was tiny, but it was mine. My paycheck was more than enough. I furnished the place secondhand from a weekend flea market near Westerstraat, and every piece I picked made me feel like I was building something again, but this time, just for me. And yet, the part that still messes with me? I sometimes wonder if they really understood. If they ever connected the dots. Did they look at the empty couch and wonder why I didn't yell on my way out? Did they see the empty closet and remember how they'd laugh when I worked through dinner? Did they look around the house and realize it was me who made it a home? Or did they just get mad? Because men like Mark and Ronald, guys raised on the myth that being male meant being served, they don't often reflect. They react. I didn't leave to teach them a lesson. I left because I was done being the lesson. Being the one who gives and gets nothing back. The one who gets blamed for not smiling enough, not being feminine enough, not being grateful enough for carrying the full weight of two able-bodied men. Mark wasn't a monster. That's what makes it worse. He wasn't abusive. He wasn't cruel. He was just entitled. Comfortably selfish. He didn't want a wife, he wanted a replacement mother. And I was tired of raising a grown man who didn't want to grow. After a while, the silence became normal. It no longer felt like waiting. It felt like breathing. I picked up hobbies I'd long forgotten. Drawing. Cycling. Cooking just for myself. No plates to clean up but mine. No empty beer cans lining the counter. No more trying to shrink myself so his ego could stretch. And yet, every now and then, a part of me would wonder, did he open the box right away? Did he read the letter all the way through? Or did he skim it, toss it, and blame me to his dad? Did they sit in that quiet house and finally realize what I meant when I said I can't do this anymore? Or did they just blame the world, like they always did? I'll never know. I started documenting my days, not on social media, but in an old Moleskine notebook I found in a thrift store on Prinsengracht. It became my little ritual. I'd write a few lines every evening after work while sitting by my window, legs tucked under me, tea in hand. Nothing fancy. Just bits of thoughts. Fragments of reflection. Pieces of me coming back together. The first entry was just one sentence. I'm free, but I don't know what that means yet. Over time, those entries became more like letters to myself. Sometimes angry. Sometimes soft. Sometimes full of guilt. Not guilt for leaving, but guilt for staying as long as I did. I kept replaying little moments I had ignored or brushed off, the way Mark would grunt instead of say thank you. How Ron would mute the TV whenever a female reporter came on, calling her just another pretty face. The subtle mockery in Mark's voice every time I said I was tired from work, must be nice to sit behind a desk all day. How I started hiding my promotions or raises because I knew they'd make him feel small. I once told my friend Britt during a coffee run that I wasn't sure when I disappeared. She looked at me like she was about to cry and said, "You never disappeared, Malia. You were just buried." Buried. That word stayed with me. Because that's exactly what it was. I had been slowly, quietly buried under expectations. Under silence. Under the weight of having to be everything, for everyone, while pretending I was fine. But here in Amsterdam, no one expected anything from me. I wasn't a wife. I wasn't a daughter-in-law. I wasn't the sole provider for two full-grown men. I was just Malia. That was terrifying at first. But then, it became exhilarating. I remember the first time I danced in my apartment. Alone. No music. Just moving. I caught myself in the mirror and I didn't even recognize the woman I saw, not because I looked different, but because she was smiling. Truly smiling. No tension behind the eyes. No fake enthusiasm. I went to museums on Sundays. Rode the train to Zandvoort Beach one weekend just because I felt like seeing the ocean. I started making friends at work, real ones. Not just colleagues you tolerate. There was Leonie, a sarcastic systems engineer with tattoos of birds all over her forearm. She said whatever she thought, no filter. She once told me, "You are too soft-spoken for someone who built an empire on her own." That ends now. There was Jeroen, the quiet one. A developer who listened more than he spoke. He once handed me a chocolate bar during a brutal project review and just said, "Sometimes, the day just needs chocolate." I wanted to cry. Not because of the chocolate. Because it was the first small act of kindness I had received in years without strings attached. It hit me hard, how starved I had been for gentle things. Back home, softness was weakness. Feelings were drama. Resting was lazy. I had to earn every moment of stillness. But here? No one made me prove I was worthy of existing. And slowly, I stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop. I stopped checking Mark's old socials. Stopped rereading the letter I sent them. Stopped waiting for someone to show up and tell me I had to go back. I began noticing the small things again, the way the light hit the windows at sunset, the smell of rain on the tram tracks, the laughter of people I didn't know drifting through open cafes. I wasn't just rebuilding, I was rediscovering. And with every passing week, the memory of that porch, the one with two men sipping beer while the world burned around them, faded into something smaller. Less vivid. Less powerful. Until it was just a story I used to tell myself to explain why I left. But even as I felt lighter, there were moments when the weight returned. Random things would trigger it. I'd see a man walking with his daughter and wonder if Mark ever thought about having kids. He used to say he wanted a big family, a yard full of them. But what kind of father would he have been? What kind of grandfather would Ron have been? Sometimes I pictured that life. Me, raising children in that house while two grown men watched football, waiting for dinner. Teaching my daughter to stand up for herself while modeling submission. Teaching my son to be kind while letting his father mock my exhaustion. The hypocrisy of it made me feel sick. Other days, I missed the familiarity of the South. I missed my cousin Tamar, who watched Lacey for me. I missed sweet tea and thunderstorms. I missed the smell of honey and Halil in May. I missed home, but not the version I had made with Mark. That wasn't home. That was survival. One Sunday afternoon, while walking back from the Noordermarkt, I passed a street musician playing something on the accordion. A woman next to me started singing softly in Dutch. I didn't understand the words, but I knew the feeling. Nostalgia. Sadness. Liberation. That's when it hit me, grief isn't only for people who die. Sometimes, we grieve people who are still alive. Futures that didn't happen. Versions of ourselves we outgrow. I was grieving the life I thought I wanted. Not because I missed it, but because I had invested so much of myself into it. And now? That version of me, the one who tiptoed around egos, who said it's okay when it wasn't, who smiled through unpaid bills and broken promises, she was gone. And the new me? She was just beginning to emerge. Winter in Amsterdam arrived slowly, like a quiet guest who didn't want to disturb anyone. The city softened. Lights shimmered in the canals. Window panes steamed with warmth from inside cafes. Everyone wore scarves and thick coats, and the tram bells seemed gentler, somehow. I found myself walking more. Even in the cold. Especially in the cold. It gave me time to think. To breathe. To process things I had never really given myself permission to feel. Because once the adrenaline of leaving wore off, and trust me, there was a lot of adrenaline in the beginning, what remained was the ache. Not just from what I left, but from everything I accepted for so long. There were so many things I tolerated that now seemed absurd in hindsight. Like how I used to apologize for buying new work clothes, even though I was the one funding our lives. Or how I planned Mark's birthday every single year, start to finish, even when he forgot mine. How Ron once called me bossy for reminding him not to put oil-soaked rags near the heater, and when I pointed out it was a safety concern, he told me I was being emotional. Those memories would surface at the oddest times, folding laundry, standing in line at the grocery store, hearing someone behind me speak with a southern accent. I didn't hate them. Not really. What I felt was heavier than hate. It was disappointment. Not in who they were, but in who I had allowed myself to become around them. That version of me had slowly vanished. The one who minimized her accomplishments to protect a man's pride. Who stayed quiet to avoid another lecture about respect. Who wore invisible armor every single day, then smiled so no one would ask questions. I had been so good at making it look okay that I started to believe it was. It wasn't. The worst part? They didn't even realize the damage they were causing. To them, it was just normal. Standard. Tradition. Men lead. Women support. That was the mantra. Spoken or not, it echoed in everything they did. I started having recurring dreams around that time, of walking through my old house, only everything was empty. Stripped bare. The walls were cracked. The windows were boarded up. And every time I opened a door, it just led to another version of the same broken room. I'd wake up with my heart pounding, sweat soaked into my sheets, the sound of silence louder than anything. But in the morning, I'd walk to the little cafe near DePidge, order a warm croissant and espresso, sit by the window, and remind myself, that house doesn't exist anymore. That life is over. In late January, I got a message request on Instagram from a name I hadn't seen in a long time, Kendra, Mark's younger sister. We were never close, but she was kind to me at family gatherings. The kind of woman who would bring her own Tupperware because she didn't trust Ron not to season things with bacon grease, despite her being vegetarian. I hesitated before clicking on the message. But curiosity got the best of me. It said, "Hey Malia, I know it's been a while, and I understand if you don't want to hear from me. I just wanted to say." I saw the letter. Mark showed it to me when I visited him last month. He's not doing great. But honestly, I think it's the first time he's ever had to sit with himself. Not deflect. Not blame. Just sit. It shook him. Maybe not enough. But more than I thought possible. Ron, well, Ron's still Ron. You know how he is. Anyway. I wanted to tell you I get it now. You tried. And you deserved more. Wherever you are, I hope you're good. Kendra, I read it 3 times. Not because it changed anything. It didn't. But because it was the first acknowledgement, from anyone in that family, that maybe, just maybe, I hadn't been crazy. That I wasn't just too emotional, too dramatic, or too ambitious. That what I experienced was real. And even though I didn't reply, I smiled. It was like someone had finally lit a candle in a room I had spent years trying to escape in the dark. I started painting again. Just small canvases. Watercolors mostly. Nothing impressive. But there was something deeply soothing about mixing colors, watching the brush move, no one telling me what it should look like. My weekends became sacred. I'd ride my bike through the Vondelpark, stop at my favorite Turkish bakery, pick up fresh bread, and then spend the afternoon curled up on my balcony with Lacey. Yes, I finally flew her out to be with me. Tamar cried when I told her, but she understood. Lacey adjusted fast. She loved watching the boats drift down the canals. And I think she sensed the shift in me too. How much calmer I had become. How much lighter. Sometimes, I'd talk to her, like she was the only witness to my old life who truly understood. I'd pet her ears and say, "You remember how it was, don't you?" She'd wag her tail and rest her head on my leg like she did back when I'd cry in the bathroom at night, and she'd wait outside the door, refusing to leave. That dog had been through more of my marriage than anyone. And now, we were both free. Work was going well. Better than I expected. I led the Amsterdam housing project through phase 2 faster than projected. My manager brought me into a meeting with city officials and introduced me as one of our sharpest acquisitions. I didn't downplay it. I didn't shrink. I thanked him and stood tall. I started mentoring a junior architect from Berlin, a bright 24-year-old named Mira. She reminded me of myself at that age, hungry to prove herself, a little too eager to please. One afternoon, after a review session, she looked at me and said, "How do you stay so calm when people interrupt you or talk over you in meetings?" I paused. That used to make me shut down completely. That used to happen every single day. With Mark. With Ron. At old jobs. At family dinners. Everywhere. But now? Now, I smiled and said, because I don't question whether I deserve to be in the room anymore. She nodded, her eyes wide, and said, "I hope I get there someday." "You will," I told her. "You just have to stop apologizing for taking up space." And as I said it, I realized, I wasn't just talking to her. I was talking to every version of myself that had stayed silent for too long. One evening in early spring, I got an unexpected email. Not from Mark. Not from Ron. But from their old YouTube manager, or rather, the college intern they had paid to handle editing and uploads before they ran out of money. His name was Jared, and I remembered him vaguely. A polite kid who came over once to film them teaching men how to change a tire without whining. The subject line was just, "I figured you should see this." Curious, I opened it. Inside was a YouTube link and a one-sentence message. "This video's still unlisted, but they forgot to revoke my access. Thought you deserved the laugh. J." I hesitated, then clicked. The video was titled, "Where We Went Wrong," filmed on that same old porch. Mark and Ron sat in mismatched patio chairs, looking smaller. Not just in posture, but in presence. Like the camera had peeled something away from them. The lighting was harsh. The wind picked up the edges of their voices. It wasn't clean. It wasn't rehearsed. Mark cleared his throat first. "So, we're making this video because people keep asking what happened. Why we stopped posting. Why we disappeared. Why things fell apart." Ron just stared ahead, arms crossed, not speaking. Mark looked older. Tired. The bravado was gone. The truth is, we lost our biggest supporter. And not just financially. My wife, Malia, she carried more than I ever realized. He paused. Fidgeted. She didn't yell. She didn't slam doors. She just left. And she was right too. Ron muttered something off camera. Mark looked at him and said, "Dad, stop. You know she was." Silence. Then Mark looked back into the lens. "She left us a box. Inside was every receipt, every bill she paid, and a letter I read 10 times. She didn't curse me out. She didn't trash my stuff. She didn't make a scene. She just left with her dignity." He swallowed. "And in doing that, she took mine with her." Ron shifted, clearly uncomfortable. "You're really gonna sit here and tell the whole internet you got outworked by a woman?" Mark turned to him. "No, Dad. I'm gonna tell the internet that I got left behind by a woman who did everything right, while I did nothing." That line made me exhale in a way I hadn't realized. I was holding my breath. Mark continued. "I thought being a man meant being in control. Being dominant. But I wasn't leading anything. I was just taking. And now I get to live with that." The video ended abruptly. No music. No branding. Just static. I sat there staring at the screen, stunned. It wasn't public. It wasn't meant for the world. It was a confession. A small, raw truth. And somehow, it felt like the final page in a chapter one hadn't known was still open. But that wasn't the real ending. That came a few weeks later. I was presenting at an urban development conference in Rotterdam. It was a huge deal, hundreds of firms, architects, engineers, sustainability experts. Sierra was there too, the woman who had helped me get this job in the first place. We laughed over wine the night before, reminiscing about our old office in Charlotte. "You were always too damn smart for those men," she said with a grin. "You just needed a different skyline." After my panel, a man approached me in the hallway. Late 40s. Well-dressed. Polite. "Ms. Bryant?" "Yes?" "I'm with an international consulting firm based in Oslo. We've been following your work. We'd like to talk about a possible leadership role, Europe-wide. You'd oversee urban infrastructure projects in 5 countries. I blinked. Sorry, what? He smiled. "We'll email you the details. No pressure. Just think about it." I never imagined a day where someone would try to recruit me to lead projects across countries. But there it was. Right in front of me. And as I stepped into the elevator that evening, phone buzzing with new LinkedIn requests and my inbox lighting up with congratulations, I thought, this is it. This is the revenge. Not screaming. Not plotting. Not some dramatic court battle or public shaming. Just living. Thriving. Becoming everything they tried to downplay. They never expected me to succeed without them. But I did. And not just in career. In life. In peace. In joy. In the quiet moments of eating a fresh croissant by a canal with a dog who only ever asked for love and gave double in return. That was the real win. And it only got better. About a month later, I was sitting in my apartment reading a book when I heard Lacey bark. A delivery had come. A flat parcel, addressed to me. No return address. Inside was a manila folder and a small note card. The folder contained typed documents, divorce paperwork from Mark's lawyer. Signed. Completed. Processed. A clean, final signature at the bottom. The card had just 4 words, handwritten in black ink: "You were always right." No name. But I didn't need one. I fed the card to the small fire I had going in my little Dutch fireplace. Folded the documents into a drawer. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Not everything needs a war. Some stories just need you to walk away. Because sometimes, the loudest revenge isn't noise. It's silence. It's freedom. It's building a life so rich, so whole, so untouchable. The people who once underestimated you can only watch from a distance, knowing they're no longer part of the view.